As you know, I'm mainly a horror story narrator, one of hundreds, perhaps thousands of horror narrators on YouTube. Naturally, we would often talk about ghosts and spirits, but hardly anybody actually asked a fundamental question. What is a ghost? Why some become ghosts when they die, while others not? Should we be scared of them? What do they really want? And those questions are the theme of this week's episode. Of course, the world of paranormals is not like an academic or scientific subject. There cannot be a definitive theory and ways to prove them. The stories I'm going to read today are merely to give certain perspectives rather than an answer. One is an interview with a shaman giving her understanding of the spiritual world, largely based on traditional Korean shamanism. Second is an account by a person with a self-professed spiritual power. Her account is not quite as coherent as that of a professional shaman, but her diverse experience definitely provides interesting perspectives. The third one is about a strange dream. It may be just a dream, but its detailed account gives a convincing and chilling picture as how a lost spirit gradually turning into an evil. Three very different stories, but I think you will find certain common ground between them. So, here are three allegedly true stories from Korea about what ghosts and spirits may be. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. There was a well-known fortune teller in Busan about 5 or so years ago. She had a contact with her god and worked as a shaman for some time, but as it sometimes happens, the god left her, and by the time I visited her in a small cottage at the remote foot of the mountain, she just took it as a small-time hobby to give people advices about their future and fortune. As for me, I was very much interested in fortune-telling at the time, not just in what my own destiny should be, but the entire art of fortune-telling itself, because I thought that could be a shortcut to fortune and eventual happiness. By now, I know it was an immature and naive thought, but anyway, that was why I got out to seek the old lady. When I found her cottage, she wasn't home. Young and enthusiastic, I just sat in front of the cottage and waited. She came after a good 2 hours. At my straightforward request that I'd like to hear what she knew about ghosts, and that I was willing to pay for her piece of knowledge, she bursted into laughs. She was but a small, round old lady, but had a strong aura. And behind my bold words, I was actually a bit scared. To my surprise, she invited me in and gave me a cup of some sort of herbal tea, which was bitter, but I pretended to appreciate it. "Just say it if you don't like it," said the old lady, giving me a sharp stare. "Well, can you read my mind?" I said. "It's bitter to my taste too," she said. I bursted into laughter, and that broke the ice. The following is the summary of our conversation. Are there really ghosts? Yes. And no. What I mean is there aren't what we picture as ghosts in a human shape, with eyes, nose and mouth. Our soul is consisted with 2 parts, Hon and Pek. Hon is the yang, region and spiritual part of our soul, while Pek is yin, instinctive and physical. When we die, Hon remains and Pek wanders around the universe. Then what about the resentful ghosts? When one dies unnaturally, as in a freak accident, for example, Hon remains stuck, and that may occasionally manifest. People with spiritual eyes, like myself, can see it sometimes. Is there then distinction between good and evil spirit? Well, spirits of one's ancestors are invariably a bad news. They are often in the way, full of desire to fulfill what they failed in their lifetime, through their descendants. Why is that? Because they haven't learned their lesson from their life. What is that lesson? That our life and death are all up to the will of the heaven. Even when the death seem unjust to human mind, it's all just part of the workings of the universe. Should we be scared of ghosts? Only 2-3 out of 100 would turn out to be evil. Even those 2-3 are not inherently evil. They just take a grudge because they feel they are ignored. There's no reason to be scared of them. They were all once a human like you and me. What's your opinion of exorcism? It's a popular subject for some TV shows nowadays. That's wrong. The harder you try to get rid of them, the angrier and more desperate ghosts become. You have to rather appease and coax them. Can you then have a talk with ghosts? That's why I have this shrine here. I offer a drink in the morning and evening there to console the lost wandering souls. Could a normal person do such like you too? There are wandering souls in any old dark alley, empty plots and crossways. Anybody could pour a glass of drink in such a place with a prayer for them. Can one become friends with a ghost? You better not. Tangled up karma never goes without a consequence, if not in your lifetime, in your child's life for sure. Does everyone who killed oneself or killed in an accident turn into an evil soul? I told you, they are not evil. They just want their resentment to be heard and understood. There is no truly evil spirit. Well, apart from meddling spirits of ancestors, that is. But then, why do the ghosts depicted in TV shows and films look so horrendous? Our soul looked the way we died. If you should die broken into pieces, your soul would appear in pieces too. And people who happen to see your soul in that state would get terrified. One reason we should try and die peacefully. Do ghosts know they are ghosts? Most don't, about 80% of them. Had they known, they would have moved on. What happens to those ghosts who don't realize they are ghosts? They are lost and wander the world in the appearance as they died. They are what we commonly refer as ghosts in the TV shows and horror stories. So, at the spot of a disaster, like a Sampung department store, are there a lot of such wandering souls? Hush! Don't talk of them lightly. They are everywhere. They cannot be consoled by simple rituals, when each of them have their own complicated story. What do you mean? Wandering souls are everywhere and at all times. If you mention lightly of victims of such a disaster, you never know one of them might be watching you. Karma never fails. Well, so I'd better be good. Of course. Even wandering souls know goodness when they see it, and they'll bring you good luck. I find it a bit creepy that souls are everywhere. Don't be. There's one behind you now too. Really? Is it a bad news? Don't worry. looks an old lady, and she will eventually save you when you have a bad luck in the future. As a side note, I was involved in a major car accident 3 years later. My car was 80% decimated, but I could walk out with a minor injury. What about different religions? I guess both Christianity and Buddhism assume souls, spirits, and ghosts. Buddhism don't assume ghosts. That's just misconception, as Buddhism corrupted with superstitions and other beliefs in later years. What about the Christian God then? Christian God is the boss of all ghosts. Very powerful. That's why there's no any old ghosts around a truly devout Christian. Are you saying that the Christian God does exist? That's not the point. Exist or not, if a lot of people believe in him and worship him, that alone makes him exist. That's kind of deep. Not sure if I understood it. No matter. When it comes to religions, what matters is if it suits your nature. What would you say to skeptics? What's there to say when one doesn't believe it? They may learn when the time comes. What matters is not if spirit exists or not. Just live by the will of the universe. See beyond the hustle and bustle of our little human desires. Don't harm others and live harmoniously with others. What we desire, money, fame, power, they are all but vanity. The more blind you are by such vanity, the more likely your soul would end up a lost soul, because you fail to learn the lesson. Thank you. Is there anything left you want to say? There's nothing to be scared of. It's all part of the universe. Now shut up and have another cup of tea. I first want to emphasize that this is 100% true account. 100% true to me in any case. I've seen ghosts from my childhood, of all sorts of age, gender, and shape. Ghosts love to get recognized and would pester around once they notice somebody can see or sense them. Albeit, they cannot attach themselves easily if the person gives off a happy, bright, and energetic vibe. Once they find one who can sense them, ghosts would want to communicate their story, but not by direct words as often depicted in films, but more through various sensory sensations, like telepathy. They seem to feel invariably lonely and isolated. Unfortunately, there weren't much I can do to help them, and such contact only left me hazy and creeped out, because ghosts do not exist in the same dimension as the living humans. I've been told I was destined to become a shaman, but I didn't want to accept it. But then I had to suffer a series of contacts with ghosts. On one occasion, my body ached all over, though doctors could not diagnose anything wrong with me. My appetite suddenly shifted, as well as I found female forms arousing. I'm a girl, and by fact I know I'm not gay. I realized it should be a male ghost affecting me, and my suspicion turned out to be true. When one night I was woken up with a strange smell, I saw a big black male figure whose features I could not clearly see. He communicated that he was burned to death and that he wanted me to accompany him in death. I honestly didn't know how to deal with him, so I just ignored him. Another time, I woke up in the morning and just cried out loud with an unbearable feeling of sorrow. I realized the female ghost attached to me, a woman who ended her own life. She showed me what made she did what she did. She was a married woman, but her husband abandoned her and took the custody of her baby too. She felt she couldn't breathe with a broken heart and thought she wouldn't need to suffer anymore should she end her life, and jumped off from her high-rise flat. But her breathtaking pain remained even in death. She made me feel her pain too, and indeed it was so suffocating that I thought I would have killed myself too. She was stuck in that state forever. I cried for her a lot. Before she left, she told me that my own dark thought was attracting dark souls around, but I should never ever be tempted to suicide, that I should learn from her sad example. Another time, I encountered a ghost of a man sitting on a rock by a roadside. He was waiting for his beloved, that she should come and join him soon. I asked him how long he'd been waiting. "For 100 years," he replied. I told him she should be dead by now, but he insisted she should come if as a spirit. When I suggested that she might have moved on already, he bursted into lamentful sobs. From him, I learned how foolish our obsessions are. Or once I ran into a female ghost riding on a 6-legged horse. I could instantly feel she was a deeply resentful one. Apparently her daughter went missing and was found as a dismembered corpse. The killer was never found, and she died of lament and anger. Unfortunately, even in death, she could not find out who killed her daughter. Her resentment was so deep, and ripping heart was not enough to describe her pain. The encounter left me shaken for a good 1 week afterwards. My suffering continued. All the shamans I visited simply told me that there was no other way than accept my destiny and God and become a shaman. Expensive rituals and talismans that supposed to help me were all in vain. In the end, I found a Buddhist monk who was said to help people like me. I drove a long way to meet him. He welcomed me and said, "You've suffered a lot, I see. They are all just lost souls, not your God." And despite of myself, I flipped and replied back, "But I'm a god." It's a male ghost," said the monk, and further explained that apart from Buddha and Christian God, the rest are all just lost souls and no more. He recommended to dedicate myself to one of such true God, and that should help me rid of pestering ghosts. "Whichever religion you choose, truly and sincerely believe in it. There's no God in churches and no Buddha in temples, because human desire has tainted them. True faith is within yourself." I chose to become a Catholic, and since then I gradually got rid of physical and mental pains. My third eye remained still opened, but those I met after I found my peace were different kind. Souls are people who dedicated or sacrificed themselves for others and for greater good. Encounters with such spirit filled me with gratefulness and awe. They even smelt beautifully. One such soul was that of a young man who died as an independent resistance against Japan, and he told me a lot about the workings of the universe. Most common ghosts are full of regrets and resentments for what they failed in their lifetime, things they didn't do, didn't eat, pleasures they didn't get to enjoy. But this soul of a young man assured me that there is no reason to regret, that life continues as a soul too. He also explained that God was the universe itself, that we all have to care for each other because we are all interlinked. Every religion has their own point and can help people in their quest for true happiness, but it was all lie that only certain faith is true and others would go to hell. That such was a nonsense born out of human greed. People tend to think the key to heaven is the goodness and righteousness, but in fact, the true key to heaven is happiness. True happiness from the depth of our soul would naturally lead us to love and care for others too. And that state of mind itself is the heaven. Now I don't see souls and ghosts anymore. As painful as the experience with the ghosts was for me at the time, the whole thing taught me a lesson that I otherwise wouldn't have known. And I'm forever grateful for that. I had this wild yet intricate dream. In the dream, I was traveling by myself in the wild, somewhere that seemed like in Australia. I walked along the road, carrying a backpack, taking photos of the landscape. Then, with a screech of a short stopping of a car, I lost consciousness. When I got around again, I was thrown off behind a bush. I must have been hit by a car, and the driver seemed to have hid my body behind a bush. And there I died. The spirit of me was still thinking like a living person, how my family back in Korea would be worrying about me, how I missed my pet dog. It was so sad that I didn't even have a chance to say my last goodbyes to the people I loved. I stood by the motorway, hoping some passerby might see me and retrieve my body and send it back to my family. A month passed, but most didn't even seem to be able to see that I was there. Few who did see me seemed to get terrified and drove away like mad. As desperate as I was, I didn't want to pursue them too hard. I think I instinctively knew that I would be passing a certain point of no return should I harm a living person for my own purpose. Then a man in his 20s saw me. Unlike others, he seemed to be too shocked to speed away, but almost stopped short. I thought this was my chance, so hopped on the back seat of his car. He was absolutely terrified and chanted all the way, "That can't be true. I'm just hallucinating. It's not there. It's not there." But I just sat there till he got his home. At his place, I kept myself low as not to terrify him further, and just appeared when he went to bed. I pinned him down, I guess he must have experienced it as a sleep paralysis, and told him who I was, where my body was, and that I wanted to go back to Korea. I repeated time after time, both in Korean and English. But shit, he didn't understand what I said. He just cried pathetically with terror. So, I stopped the night terror method. Nevertheless, he still was my only hope. All he needed to do was find my body out and send it to Korea, and then I would leave him alone. With that singular hope, I hung around him for a good half a year. Even he got used to my presence because I didn't do any particular harm. And in that time, I learned the guy was a total loser and a walking mishap, constantly running into little accidents and mistakes. So, Unwittingly, I started playing his guardian angel, saving him from all those accidents. He gradually got confident and successful, and seemed to trust me more and more, but not as a wholesome entity, but more like his own lucky charm. In any case, the more he trusted me, the more my power of influence grew. By then I could move things as I liked, like a poltergeist. 5 years passed, and the guy now had a good job, got married, and led a happy life, while I was getting more and more frustrated. I hoped, since I helped him out so much, he would play some Ouija board, seek a medium or whatever to try to communicate with me. But no, not at all. I was just a dubious but essential lucky charm for his own good. One night, out of frustration, I was mumbling to myself next to him, sleeping. He seemed to finally have picked up, "I want to go home," and after all these years asked me for the first time, "Where's your home?" Oh my, that excitement I felt! Or so I should have felt that moment. But after years as a ghost, all the human emotions have already dried up in me. The only thing I could truly feel was pain. Anyway, I hurriedly told him all, how I died, where my body should be. "Please send me back to my family. Haven't I helped you out enough to grant my wish now?" But I could see what he was thinking. "God, that's far away. So much of a hassle too. And I'd better keep you next to me." I got angry, but hoped one day he would change his mind, and hung around another 5 years. Now he became a father. And one day, I was hit by a grave sense that my parents back in Korea had just passed away. Unlike me hanging around as a ghost, they seemed to have passed on to the underworld peacefully. And that meant I would never be able to see them again. I waited too long. I took my time too long, all because of this ungrateful bastard. With a growing sense of loss and rage, I turned into an evil. Now I could not even feel pain. The only thing left in me was hate towards the guy. I didn't have a reason to exist anymore. Now nobody would love me again. Nobody would remember me. All because of him. I first killed his wife. Even in the dream, I could feel the sense of excitement and fulfillment after I crushed her to bits. The guy bewailed at me why I didn't prevent it this time, but I just laughed and hissed. Except he, so taken by grief, didn't seem to realize I was laughing for the first time in our 10 years of our life together. I hid myself away from him, suppressing my growing excitement in anticipation of destroying everything valuable for him. Next target were his parents. I used my trick to have them win a free travel deal, and on their trip, I trapped his father in the indoor barbecue to give him a slow, suffocating death, while I pulled his mother to the deep end of the pool to drown her. I jumped around with joy for my achievement. The guy called out for me in despair, but I kept hiding and just laughed at his grief and suffer behind his back. I was already excited about my next target, his daughter. I lured and teased his neighbor's dog and got it beat away the little girl's throat in the plain sight of her dad. She died with the blood spewing out from her throat like a fountain. I was so overjoyed that I could not even think to hide myself from him anymore. I just laughed, jumped, and danced around with all the ecstasy I felt. Now you know my pain too, don't you? Having lost everything? He was now half mad and just stayed inside. I was happy to see him in that state, but got a bit bored having nothing more to take away from him. I just kept pestering around him, pushing my giggling face right up to his. One day he tried to talk to me, but I couldn't care less. I just kept whispering, "It's all your fault, it's all your fault," and danced around him. In the end, he seemed to decide something. He took a rope and a chair and hung himself. I just thought it all came to the justful end and danced around, at one point even on all fours, not being able to contain my excitement. When his body stopped struggling and gone limp, suddenly all emotions washed away from me. The deep realization came upon me was, now I would be left here just like this, all alone and with no purpose, forevermore. I pushed my face right up to the guy's face one last time and looked into his now hazy and lifeless eyes. And then I woke up. I'm quite stirred by this dream. The whole arc of emotional journey I went through was so vivid, and I still remember the poor guy and his family's faces. Could this be really how a lost spirit turns into an evil? Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and hope they gave you things to think about too. Even though I'm running a horror story channel here, I'm basically a skeptic actually. My interest in paranormals is largely based on the fact they actually reflect our life, especially the aspects that are not often talked about, such as fear, taboos, and darkness. From today's stories too, I'm more intrigued by the lessons as how we should live in this life than anything else, or such cultural aspect as how Christianity and Christian God is understood in traditional shamanism. What about you? What did you think of today's stories? Did they reflect something of your own understanding of ghosts and paranormals? Let me know in the comment. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a like and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel to help it grow. Sadly, its growth has been stagnating in recent months, and I need your love. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters are getting an early access to my new videos. Thank you. Until next Sunday, stay safe and take care.